The Gauntlet is one of the most brutal tests of players and builds in Path of Exile. It's often a source of innovation for hardcore builds and things that become meta later on. This is because if it works in the Gauntlet, it's going to blow the rest of the game away. At least as long as you don't care about going super fast. Because in the Gauntlet, you can't go super fast. Everything is terrifying. Things have extra damage, you need additional res on your gear, and multi-proj. And if you aren't terrified yet, don't worry. Multi-proj is about the worst thing that can happen in Path of Exile. Now, before the Gauntlet started, I made some predictions about things I expected to see and expected to be popular, such as Detonate Dead Necro, Spectral Shield Throw Gladiator, and Toxic Rain Raider, all of which were accurate predictions. But today, I didn't want to talk about things that I called. Instead, I want to talk about some things that I didn't call. Builds that are very different from what you'd expect in the Gauntlet or in PoE in general, played by people who did extremely well and had great success. So here are the 3 hottest builds to watch of the Gauntlet League. Not necessarily because they're the most popular, but because they're the most unique and have some really well put together mechanics that I wanted to highlight. This video was brought to you in part due to the generous support of my YouTube channel members and patrons. More about how you can support at the end of the video. But if you want to help for free, you can do so by feeding the algorithm gods and leaving a like on the video, or turning on bell notifications so that you see whenever I upload. Starting with a build that, if you introduced it to me by name before the Gauntlet, I would have been very skeptical. And that is a Slayer Onigoroshi Bladestorm Rage Vortex build, which, saying it, sounds absolutely ridiculous and completely impractical. After all, the Gauntlet is about scary enemies. Why would you set yourself on fire and add to the damage? But it certainly has been very effective. Karn reached level 98 and completed a lot of the goals to get a good number of extra points. The Onigoroshi farming took a little bit of time, but it certainly was well worth it, as this way you don't need something like a Paradoxica or Mirror Tier weapon that would be far more difficult, if not impossible, to make in the Gauntlet setting. I say more difficult because sometimes you just randomly get a Headhunter in Gauntlet. It can happen, but if you don't have that, Onigoroshi is a good item to go after because it's reliable and you know you will get it after enough hours spent dying to Uber Hillock. We have a Taste of Hate, Fizz taken as Elemental on the helmet, and a really nice Kelm's Heart. The idea here is to round out the defenses in combination with the absolutely massive life pool. Gauntlet's super scary and there's a ton of damage, so why not give yourself as many defenses as possible? Now, personally, I might have gone with the Frenzy Charge stacking, Endurance Charge stacking version if I was playing in a trade league. But in Gauntlet, you're far more limited on resources because it's a 1 week long hardcore solo self-found experience. So going for a massive life pool, getting just enough defenses, and then going all in on Fizz taken as Ellie is a good way to survive. And one of the really cool things that I saw is Battle Mage's Cry support, which is being used to automate Assassin's Mark. This is one of those things that in a trade league, you probably wouldn't see it. You'd just see an Assassin's Mark ring here. But in Gauntlet, if you don't find an Assassin's Mark ring, well, you have to make do. And Battle Mage's Cry is good enough. I really like this combo. I think that a lot of the time, people overlook Bladestorm. It's one of the strongest melee skills that people just don't play. So I'm really happy to see the success that Karn found with it in the Gauntlet. On top of that, Rage Vortex is an underrated support skill. We've got Rage Vortex with Rage support, so it gens Rage for itself, Onslaught support to give him Onslaught, and Fortify to give him Fortify. Now, in Gauntlet, he has double Fortify in both links to make sure he has 100% uptime, but in a trade league, I could easily see dropping one and also adding in something like a life gain on hit ring or on hit Watcher's Eye with Vitality, as that would get you a ton of additional survivability because both Bladestorm and Rage Vortex hit a ton, which makes them great for pairing together. In the future, I may very well play some sort of Rage Vortex Bladestorm hybrid build, so keep an eye out for that. Next up, we have Tatiantel, who played a very unorthodox but highly effective Glacial Cascade Totem build. Tatiantel is the totem guy. If you want to know more about totems, you should probably go watch his content, as he knows what he's talking about. We see a lot more of a standard totem build here, although the decoy totem on top of regular totems is a nice little addition that I didn't see enough of the Forbidden Rite totem builds running. Furthermore, we're using Arcane Cloak to add a little bit of damage. I would assume there was an attempt made to go for Trinity support, but it didn't quite work out. I could easily see Trinity being worked into this build instead of just scaling the pure cold res. Of course, the only concern here is curses, because you're constantly cursing yourself with Soul Mantle. So we have these two very nice reduced effective curses on you rings. They also have +1 minimum endurance charges for additional survivability, as long as you have the max endurance charges, which in this case, Tatiantel does, because he isn't taking the node to give him 4 minimum and +1 max. So while this might not be as meta as Forbidden Rite Totems, I would assume the damage is far more direct, and it's a very effective clear build. With 6.3k life and 5k mana, along with 2.1k energy shield, it was also pretty good at taking a hit. The recovery might not be quite as good as an agnostic build, but with that massive health pool, you can eat some of those shotgun projectiles if you happen to make a mistake. One other thing I like is the addition of Blast Freeze, so if one enemy gets frozen by the Glacial Cascade, it will happily proliferate through the pack and freeze absolutely everything. It might not be the most meta totem build, and totems probably won't be meta as of next league, but this has certainly been a strong, effective, and tanky way to league start that I could see people playing in hardcore going forward. And finally, we have Grumpy Penguin with a Flame Wall Fire Trap build on a Chieftain. Now, Fire.Chieftain is an archetype that we haven't seen for a while. It often got popularized alongside doing something like Flame Wall Spellslinger. This version is a little bit more manual, and kind of combines the idea of using Fire Trap as a really consistent single target damage over time with a gigantic AoE, in combination with Flame Wall to boost that damage up a little bit further. Now, there doesn't seem to be any sort of automation going on here, but the Flame Wall should be hitting pretty hard, given that we have both burning damage and Conk Effect. Similarly, we've got a really nice defensive setup, because Chieftain offers all the defenses, and we have enough armor to maintain a Molten Shell. And of course, because we're a Chieftain and because we're in the top left of a tree, we are scaling block without Glancing Blows, which is important because with Glancing Blows, you can take enough hits to get shredded, assuming you don't have life gain on block on your shield. I'm sure the On's heritage isn't quite BIS here, but it is quite reliable, and there should be endurance charges up most, if not all of the time for this build, especially given that Immortal Call isn't eating them, and also that we have an endurance charge generator by using fire skills from the Chieftain Ascendancy. So overall, this is a very safe and reliable build, and could comfortably handle all the content needed for the Gauntlet. This is another one that I suspect will be an excellent league starter in hardcore, but probably not something we see quite as often, just because it's a fairly unpopular archetype. So these are 3 builds that had very interesting and unusual applications of mechanics that I wanted to highlight. Of course, if you want the most meta Gauntlet build, or things that worked in the Gauntlet going forwards, it's exactly what you'd expect. Things like Toxic Rain Raider, Cold Dot Vortex, Detonate Dead Necro, Forbidden Rite Totem Hierophant, and of course Spectral Shield Throw Gladiator, among all the other usual suspects. But I wanted to talk about these builds instead, because they're a little bit different, they're not what you'd expect, and they all worked really well. Congratulations for everyone who participated in the Gauntlet. I hope you learned a lot, had a ton of fun, and didn't die to disconnect too many times, as that is definitely the worst way to lose a character in PoE. If there's any other really cool and successful Gauntlet builds that you saw or you played yourself, please feel free to highlight them down in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and again, a special thanks to my patrons and YouTube channel members. If you want to support me, you can do so by clicking the links down in the description below, or on screen right now. You can also support by making purchases through my Nexus page. Or if you just want to chill and hang out, be sure to join the Discord. Again, links for everything are down in the description below. Thank you, and have a great day.